Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This seminar is really a celebration of ILS as it has hit its 60th birthday, as best as we can tell, anyway. Um, but in the UK, we haven't been doing ILS for 60 years, somewhat less. I think it's about 36 years, depending on when the first program started. And I don't know whether I want to admit this or not, but I've been involved in ILS for 33 of those 36 years. So the aim of this presentation is to basically take a look back and see what's happened to ILS over that period of time, what benefits it's brought to the UK defence organisations, but also to ask ourselves, what are we looking for seeing in the future? What do we want? What developments do we want to see in terms of ILS, and how optimistic are we? What's it going to look like when it gets to its 100th birthday, for example? Now, the first program in the UK to apply ILS was what was then called the Eurofighter program. Now, of course, this is the Typhoon. And I believe that kicked off in around about 1988. May have been a little earlier, but let's say 1988. That gives us 36 years. 36 years ago from now. And I started working for BAE Systems at the time. 3 years later, in 1991, on the same program. Following a career in the army as an aircraft technician. Well, these are the three questions I've been asked to respond to. I won't read them out. I think you're all familiar with them now. In essence, though, what we're looking at is a retrospective. That's what question one is asking us to look at. What impact has ILS made in the UK? What benefits has it brought to, let's say, the defence contractors, procurement agencies, and most importantly, to the end user, the guys in the blue and the green baggy suits, the army, the navy, the air forces, etc. Now, the second question is really if Pete had a magic wand, well, what would I do? What would I change that would enhance the effectiveness of ILS within the UK market or globally, if it's appropriate? And I have a very strong opinion about that, which I shall share with you shortly. And the third one is crystal ball gazing again into the future and asking us what do we think is likely to happen, and can we be optimistic about that when we look into the future? If we're looking not forward quite 60 years, I don't think I'm going to be around that long, but looking into the future, let's say the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what is likely to happen in terms of ILS within the UK defence sector. Now, before I start on the presentation proper and answering those questions, I want to take a step back and go back to some first principles and ask a basic question, which is, why do we do ILS? Because obviously, if we're going to talk about what are the benefits and how we're going to improve things, we've got to have a clear understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. So just going through a sort of a basic logical process. Then, if we ask why, well, the answer is quite simple. We want to deliver an optimal product. In this case, it's an optimal support solution. Now, that support solution is comprised of the support elements of the mission system. That's the platform, the equipment, the ship, the tank, the airplane, and so on. And of course, we're interested in the reliability, maintainability, the architecture, the operability, and a whole range of other factors associated with the mission system. Virtually the entire support system, that is the support infrastructure that we put in place to support our mission system, our platforms, including the end user, prime contractors, third parties, anyone involved in the provision of support. And then the employment plan, which is basically a definition of how the platform, the equipment, etc., is going to be used, where it's going to be used, under what environmental conditions, what enemy action is we likely to experience, what damage modes, what are the length of the lines of communication, etc., etc. Now, this is important because it's the interactions between those three elements that determine operational availability and, of course, through life cost. And that in turn determines the degree of support advantage, or disadvantage if we get it wrong, that our support solution will deliver. And of course, blindingly obvious then, the better our support solution is, the more effective our systems will be. And probably the more systems that will be available for the operator to deploy when they're on combat or any other sort of mission. Now, an optimal support solution design is achieved by basically applying effective support engineering, i.e. ILS, and that subset of ILS, which is LSA. So ultimately, what this is about and what this conversation is about that's coming up is about how support engineering delivers improved operational capability. So what's it managed to do so far in the past? What does Peter think they're going to change to make it better? And how optimistic am I about the future of ILS? So the first question is, what positive impact has ILS made in the UK? Now, if we stop and take stock of where we are today in the UK in terms of ILS and support generally, to be honest, we're not in that great a place. That's the brutal reality of it. We seem to be in an era which is sort of logistics blind, and this applies to logistics support, as in bombs and bullets and boots type logistics, as well as ES, which is engineering support that we address through the application of ILS. It seems that the overweening desire is to procure and to field some sort of pointy shiny things, and some blunt and dull green things and big grey, black or sinky or floaty things, so long as they have on board all the right sort of technical toys and so on. Now, these shiny toys seem to dazzle the eye of many players, so much so that they fail to see clearly the need for and the importance of all things to do with logistics, i.e., the need for the right spares and the right quantity spares to get the supply line sorted out, to get the right people, training capabilities, tools, reliability, maintainability, standardization, etc., etc., etc. Now, there is some sort of clear evidence here of cognitive dissonance in play. Now, that is the ability to, amongst other things, adopt to completely contradictory positions and to maintain those positions regardless of the volume or the quality of the evidence placed in front of you that demonstrates that you are wrong. So, for example, reiterating the mantra that support is really, really important, whilst also believing that cutting support in order to fund more hardware is a rational approach, despite an overwhelming mass of contrary evidence. So, the situation is not great, but ask yourselves this. Where would we be if the ILS community had not been battling against the odds sometimes to ensure that support was not degraded beyond the present probably irreducible minimum? The ILS community and the ILS process has to some degree countered the short-termism which is unfortunately all too common on all too many programs, and it's allowing a sort of a ray of light, if you like, to fall on what would otherwise be a pretty gloomy picture. Now, the limited attention paid to and the relatively constrained investment in support that is the norm today is actually better than it could have been. And it's better because of a relatively small cadre of dedicated ILS champions, people and organisations as well, who have had the insight and, if you like, the integrity and the understanding required to speak truth unto power, and to do so with a degree of credibility. Now, without these individuals and these organisations, the situation we're in today would be significantly worse. We are, as a result of these people and these efforts, still in a position from which a timely recovery is practicable, and we can still achieve significantly improved operational capability if we're allowed to do so. The second question then. What single development could we make that would further enhance the benefit of ILS in the UK? Okay, so this is an easy one to answer. To make things better in the world of ILS? Well, the answer is actually relatively simple. All we have to do is to regard support as an integral component of an operational capability. It's not a bolt-on. The capability is not the platform. The capability is delivered by the total system, as per the diagram on the screen now. And if we can formally recognise that and stop procuring platforms and start procuring capabilities, if we can understand that a capability, the delivered capability, is the result of the interactions between the three elements of the total system, then we'll have made some significant progress. Now, this is actually not really a completely new concept. The idea generally has been around for thousands of years. Now, the logistics quotes, which are scrolling past you on the screen right now, cover a really quite immense period of time. The earliest ones range back to Sun Tzu, who lived 500 years BCE, and then they range all the way through the centuries, through the First and Second World Wars, right up to the present day. Now, many of these quotes are actually talking about the need for fuel and oil. But in the modern world, with our reliance on very, very complex systems, a lack of effective support engineering will ground your aircraft and it will neutralize your maritime and your land systems just as effectively as running out of oil or fuel ever did. So, what do we need to do as part of this change? Well, we need to realize, for example, that 8 platforms with optimal support are vastly superior to 10 platforms with inadequate support. For example, if they're short of manpower or spares, or perhaps just over-reliant on contractor support. Contractors that cannot be deployed into the field, contractors that are not conditioned or trained to operate in these, highly stressful and dangerous conditions. We need to understand that the three elements of the total system need to be comprehensive, coherent, and in balance. Is that procuring a capability without procuring the optimal support is about as logical as buying a gas turbine engine and leaving out one of the turbines to save money. If we get this right, it will deliver a stable, robust, and very flexible and agile solution. And this in its turn will give our armed forces the operational freedom of action that they require, and hence a distinctive operational advantage. We need to realize that conflating capability with a platform or even a fleet of platforms is about as rational as designing a two-legged stool. We need to realize that support isn't just important, it is actually an existential issue for the UK and the Western world. We need to realize that a truly integrated solution is the only way that an operational advantage can be achieved and maintained, and to be done in a manner that doesn't break the bank of even the wealthiest of the Western nations. And of course, that delivering such a solution is actually the raison d'etre of ILS. We need to realize that ILS, if implemented correctly, is the most effective and efficient mechanism for achieving this outcome. And so to the final question. What makes me optimistic for the future of ILS in the UK? The answer to this one is perhaps a little perverse. Now, I don't want to be rude, but the attendees of seminars like this one tend to live in a relatively small, fairly cosy little Western bubble. But even the briefest online research reveals that the world outside that bubble is not a stable place. It is not a safe place. Conversely, the issues are facing the world today give me hope that ILS will be implemented with significantly greater rigor in the future. Now, why is that? Well, the conflicts in the Ukraine and in Gaza, and more general threats from China and Russia, and the increasing awareness of the general public of such conflicts, a public who are even being made aware of, albeit to a limited degree, of some of the associated procurement and support issues, will lead inevitably to an increased investment in and attention being paid to support issues and therefore, of course, ILS. Now, much of the focus at the present is on munitions and on the capacity of, or otherwise, of the strategic bases, that's the home nations, of the Western nations to replenish and to maintain the necessary stocks of such munitions. There is also, however, a growing understanding that a relatively cheap missile, shell, drone, etc., can cause extensive damage or destroy our support resources, as well as some very sophisticated weapon systems. It is relatively easy to disrupt our supply chains. And, we have to be realistic here. All the complex electronic systems in the world struggle to counter, a large mass traveling at speed. Now, this is the awareness effect. And nothing illustrates this awareness effect more effectively than the ongoing war in the Ukraine. Now, the war between Ukraine and Russia has underscored to the West the importance of adequate engineering support. This has been highlighted by significant challenges faced by both sides. This is due to inadequate quantities of spares, tools, test equipment, repair facilities, training, manpower, technical publications even. Now, Ukraine has faced significant shortages in spare parts. This is a situation which has been exacerbated by the diverse array of military kit they're operating, this being a mixture of sort of Soviet era equipment and equipment supplied by a range of different international allies. And as a result of this, they've experienced some significant equipment downtime, and they have had to rely very heavily on cannibalization. Also, of course, the destruction of existing Ukrainian repair facilities has had its impact, and the inadequacy of what survives to handle the repair needs of this diverse and complex, sometimes very complex equipment has led to bottlenecks, and very long repair times, and an over-reliance probably on field repairs under suboptimal conditions. Now they are responding. They are developing in-country manufacturing capabilities and establishing forward and mobile repair units, and they are making use of civilian infrastructure for military repairs. Russia has adopted a very similar stance because, of course, likewise, Russia has too few trained personnel for the diverse range of technologically complex equipment that they have been deploying, combined with a lot of old equipment. Maintenance errors have contributed to extensive equipment downtime, and Russia has responded. They have begun to accelerate training programs, and they're making use of contractors, experienced contractors, and mercenaries, combined with attempts to recruit foreign technical experts. Both sides are attempting to improve Soviet-era publications and are having to create new publications at some speed to facilitate the support of new and innovative equipment. And these engineering support challenges they're facing have significantly impacted both Ukrainian and Russian military operations. Ukraine, with the aid of the international community and some innovative local solutions, has managed to mitigate some of these challenges, but not all of them. Russia, however, is facing, of course, fairly severe international sanctions and has some significant logistical hurdles to overcome, and they have struggled to maintain their equipment effectively. Now, their ability to overcome these engineering support challenges will be a critical factor in their operational capabilities and the sustainability of those capabilities of both sides in the coming months. And this is something which is very apparent to the rest of the world. Now, it's doubtful that either side could claim to be carrying out ILS, but the engineering support issues that they have both faced have significantly raised the profile of engineering support and logistics support in the eyes of the West. Even amongst our politicians, are oft times willfully blinkered politicians. The result is that it is increasingly difficult for those responsible for the provision, ultimately responsible for the provision of engineering support in the West, to continue to pay lip service to ILS. In conclusion, I believe there is room for optimism for the future of ILS. As the Western nations start to take off the blinkers and take on board these undeniable, unavoidable, and very hard-won lessons in support. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.